few minutes time, and so we should now be streaming also on YouTube. If you're watching an archived version on Facebook or YouTube, you might want to fast forward about I don't know, 9 minutes. Yeah, 9 minutes to the top of the show. All right, let's have a good one. Okay. It's Tuesday. It feels like a Monday. That's because I wasn't here yesterday. I was lazy yesterday. Are gonna get trashed. Got a feeling. Trash to the locals. Gonna get trash at the locals. Yeah, that's you, Tez. This is for you. If you got a feeling you're gonna get trash at the locals. Feeling you're gonna get trashed at the locals. Yeah, this is what it's going to be like in Conservative Central Office day after the locals, isn't it? What it's going to be like there. Here we go, bit of a preview. Yeah, it's a 1922, day after the local elections. Blimey. Come on, it's a bit blimey. Liven up a bit. 4 minutes, people. Supposed to be doing something about now. Can't remember what it is. Oh, maybe the show. There you go. will be Nigel Farage the day after the... Well, no, it won't, because he's not in it, but will be anyway. Hey, Paul.
Hi there.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've got your webcam. That's great. That's terrific.
Okay. I can't see you.
No, you won't. No, that's a bandwidth thing. Yeah, it's good. Thank you. I'll embed that. How are you today?
You start talking to me still?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good.
Good.
Been, out and about.
Good. Couple of minutes, Paul. Gonna probably Rodders will be calling in a minute too, I think. Right, 30 seconds. Hold on. Oh, hold on. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm running late. No excuse for that. Okay, all right. Hey, folks. Good evening, good people. Oh, blimey. Welcome to the Daily Brexit. I just had chaos on Skype. I don't know what's going on now. Who's there on Skype?
Me. You called. And Rodri.
I just called all you lot. Oh, what a nightmare. I apologise. We're streaming, people. I just cut off Paul Perrin as well. Paul, please call back. Look, I've got Viscounts and Davids here. Yeah.
Yep.
I just called you, didn't I, sir?
I thought I just phoned you, but never mind.
Maybe matter. You did. Brilliant. That helps. And Alan Ashwood.
Yes, sir.
You're there. Oh, blimey. Okay, good.
Well, that's background was down.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll do this intro, I suppose. Yeah, I'm Olly Connelly. Thanks for turning up. Oh, blimey. Ignoring democracy, yeah, that's what it's about tonight. Ignoring democracy. And how to use Skype properly. So what's going on with the Tilbrook case, plus idle daydreaming about impending political slaughter at the locals? My particular fantasy starring LibLabCon, who gained not a single vote ever again. But I digress. Got Viscount St David's Rudders on tonight. Paul Perrin should be here, was here. I just managed to cut him off. And we've got Alan Ashwood, who was a surprise guest because even he didn't know who was on tonight. I just called him.
I'm here.
Who else is there? That's Witcher. Is that Witcher?
It is. Good evening.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, look, guys, if you're around, if you're about to pitch in, then terrific. Struth. Right. So it's a Tuesday. Welcome to... I didn't come on yesterday because something happened. I can't remember what it was. Sound problems. Sound card issues after a Microsoft update. Guess what? So anyway, we will go through a bit of what's going on in the world of fake stream, and then hopefully pull in some of my guests here who are more numerous than expected. Paul Perrin has just called back in. Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. Okay, you're here. Viscount St David as Rodders is here. So can you hear each other?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Cool.
Perfect. I can hear you perfectly as well.
Brilliant.
I can hear everybody.
Good, Alan. Excellent. And what about you, Witchy Woo? Can you hear us?
I can hear everyone.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is he in the bath?
I am. I'm in my birthday suit. It's waterproof.
Oh no, God.
Unbelievable. Okay, fantastic. Great. Okay, so basically what's going on? Well, it just is really, it's Westminster. Yeah, they're probably a bit biased, but their take is as good as anyone's, I guess. Less than a third of 2017 Tory voters think party is pro-Brexit. New polling released today by YouGov reveals less than a third of 2017 Conservative voters think the party is pro-Brexit. Less than a third. When asked whether voters felt the party was more pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit, just 29% opted for the former, with more, 31%, actually feeling the party held an anti-Brexit stance. Another 15% said they didn't know because they must be really stupid. And the ones that think that the Tories are pro-Brexit, you're morons! Sorry. In a devastating blow to Theresa May's administration, just 27% confirmed they plan to vote Conservative again in the upcoming European parliamentary elections on May the 23rd. Any surprises? Paul Perrin, let me start with you, sir. You are a proud floating voter, I understand it, off the back of the last few years, having become disenfranchised with the Tory party and the duopoly that we have had in Westminster. You kind of move it over to UKIP, and then you lost faith in UKIP, and I understand now you've moved back to UKIP. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't actually written the check to rejoin yet, but
your politics are fundamentally libertarian. Is that right?
Yeah, very, very libertarian.
Okay.
So smaller the government, better.
Right. Okay. Fine. Well, I'm pretty sure where you would sit on this poll from YouGov today. What do you feel about UKIP versus the Brexit Party?
I think they're not really in competition with each other. I mean, they're both Brexity, but I think it's like I think the referendum result. Everyone knew how they were going to vote years before the referendum was called. Mm-hmm. They weren't influenced at the last minute. And I don't think there's anything that the Brexit or UKIP can do to attract the other supporters. I think the Conservative protest vote is going to go to the Brexit Party, apart from the Tories who hate Farage, of which there are quite a number. You know, he's very unpopular with some Tories for the damage they've done to the party in the past. But I think he's going to be picking up all the Tory protest votes, whereas UKIP are going to pick up any libertarian type votes. There's a bit of a bubble because they've got the YouTubers in now, like Carl Benjamin and Mark Meacham. I don't know who from their followings might be influenced in that way, but the support of each party are going to be slagging each other off. They already do on Facebook, etc. But I think that's all a bit pointless because they're going to be appealing to totally different audiences.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will talk more about this and analyze this throughout the show a little bit more as well. But very interesting to see what's going on between these two parties. One thing you say is that they're not competing. Well, they are now, aren't they? Because Farage has said that he is looking at elections for the Brexit Party, domestic elections as well as EU elections. He said that he's looking to the possibility of running in the general election, and also now I'm just where is it? Let me see if I can find this story quickly. He, I understand, is considering contesting a by-election that's going on or that could be going on soon. So if I can find that story, I'll bring it to you.
I have seen a couple of references from Brexit parties saying that they are going to compete nationally in domestic elections, which was something that originally people were saying that they wouldn't.
So therefore, there is a possibility of a split vote, which isn't necessarily useful for Brexit. You could argue. Let me just read the story, and then we'll come into this in a bit more detail. And I want to chuck it out to the four of you guys. Brexit party in shock, Commons bid. This is Express. Farage eyes shamed Labour MP's seat in by-election. Nigel Farage's new Brexit party have their eyes on a shock Westminster entrance as he targets a potential by-election win in Brexit-backing Peterborough. A by-election could be called later this week if a recall petition against shamed MP Fiona Onasanya is passed. Now, she's the one who was in prison for fraud or something, and then she comes out of prison and she votes and casts the deciding vote in that vomit-inducing Yvette Cooper amendment or whatever it was, and she walked in there with one of the, what are they called? Those things they put around their ankles, Rodders?
Peckham Rolex.
Peckham Rolex. She had a Peckham Rolex around her ankles. She goes and votes, and that's the deciding vote. Anyway, Peterborough voted heavily for Brexit in the 2016 referendum. That's her constituency, and she voted for Yvette Cooper's amendment. Yeah, Oliver Letwin, all that. Mr. Farage's new party said that it was highly likely we would be fighting Peterborough to win it. The Brexit party has seen a surge in support since it was launched, powering to the top of the EU election poll ahead of Labour and the Conservatives. The new party is the bookie's favourite to top the results on May 23rd, despite standing in its first election. That's, of course, the EU election, as opposed to the locals, which are on Thursday. Mr. Farage has called on the electorate to send a clear message to the two main parties and stand up for democracy by voting for his Brexit party in the EU elections. Onasanya was found guilty of perverting the course of justice after lying to police about a speeding offence. She was jailed for 3 months, serving for 4 weeks behind bars. And the former Labour MP her son was on the take as well, wasn't he? Wasn't he one of her, expense claimants or something? And he turns out he's a drug dealer, probably peddling it in the Commons, God knows. Anyway, right. So that is interesting, isn't it? The goalposts have changed post-Easter, really. That now Farage is admitting, yes, we're going for the domestic elections as well. So, well, you tell me, what's your opinion on this, Rodri? It does seem to me that we are looking at a split vote from the Brexit community between Brexit Party and UKIP.
Okay, well, I'd just like to take a quick step back to Usanya, what's her name, with the Peckham Rolex. Yes. In actual fact, I don't blame her for voting. The person I blame is John Bercow for ruling, his little ruling, that she should be allowed to vote because it was at his discretion. Yeah. And I don't believe he had that discretion. But moving on, the Brexit Party was originally a one-purpose party, and Nigel Farage could not have been clearer that his purpose and utility in politics was to ensure that we left the EU. And where we find ourselves now is that the party has been morphed into two separate parties, which does split the vote. And it begs the question, what is the purpose of either or both of the parties? They seem to have lost that single purpose. We've had a referendum. It's now a matter of enforcing it. What's interesting, I'd now like to refer to the Robin Tilbrook case. The papers that have been filed in the High Court, and which, by the way, I think for the first time in any crowdfund, we are making public. So the public, members of the public, will be able to see firsthand the papers in front of the court, as opposed to some editorial comment or fake news or summary. So it will be for the people, and hopefully the people who donate to the court case, to make their own minds up based on the submissions in front of the High Court. Now, the last response from government, I thought, was actually hysterical. They made three essential points for reasons to dismiss the application in front of the court. The first is that apparently royal prerogative has been restored back to the government, even though there is no evidence of this. Second of all, the reason for not having the case heard is because of the potential chaos that may be caused in the event that the case is successful. And lastly, that in order to bring a case like this, I mean, I've offered a written underwriting, but apparently that's not good enough for the High Court under the civil procedure rules. The government has said the case should be dismissed because the applicant cannot afford to see the case through to the Supreme Court. Now, that to me is one of the most horrendous statements a government can make in its defence. This is not a civil or a commercial case. This is a constitutional matter. And yet the government is treating this as though it's checkbook litigation.
Yes.
Send people away because they don't have the money to challenge us. And let's not forget that the government is reliant on the taxpayers' money in order to defend its position.
Surely,
and I think whether you're a Remainer or a Brexiteer, it is cause for great concern that the people don't have the right to challenge in the courts the government for matters of money. I mean, it made my blood absolutely.
But that's not
freeze.
the government's business, surely, to say that the public can't afford this case. That's surely between the litigation and the barristers.
Well, that's already been taken care of as a consequence of my underwriting. But what the government is saying, and again, it will be up on the Robin Tilbrook website. We are publishing all the papers, the black and white papers in front of the court, and it is very clear what the government is saying, is that the people cannot afford to sue the government because they don't have the available funds in the account right now to take the case to the Supreme Court. And I think that's appalling. Yeah. It means that the people are being silenced because the government has more money than the people who actually have a legal gripe and a legitimate gripe. And coming back to our response back to the...
hold on. Well, sorry, apologies. Go on.
Our response back to the government, which was served in the High Court today, yesterday rather, there was a very good quote from Lord Denning. And Lord Denning said, whatever chaos may arise, the law must be obeyed.
Amen.
So the government's basically saying that if you guys win in the Supreme Court, it's going to cause us a lot of chaos. Well, I'm terribly sorry. If you've committed a crime, you've broken the law, and you're found guilty, and it causes a bit of a problem, well, so damn what? That's the nature of justice, and that's the nature of law. Otherwise, we turn into a Venezuela.
We are.
So hold on a sec, Rodri. I do want to go through a story in Express, actually, which is the only mainstream media paper which seems to be covering this that I can see. But I want to go through those points with you again, please. So the government, they say they have 3 points of objection to this case going forward. One of them is that the British people cannot afford it, or nobody can afford it, to sue the government, they're saying. What are the other two points, please?
Well, these are the three essential points of their objection.
Right.
They're called grounds for general resistance. The second point is that it is within the government's royal prerogative, in actual fact, to have agreed an extension.
Yeah.
Now, this flies absolutely in the face of the Gina Miller ruling, where royal prerogative was removed in totality. And the point being is that you can't have a little bit of royal prerogative when it suits. You either have it or you don't. And the Supreme Court said, in the matter of the Lisbon Treaty, the Withdrawal Act, any amendment to the Withdrawal Act is permissible subject to an Act of Parliament. And prior to March the 29th, there was no such Act of Parliament. What the government is now claiming the week after is that it had its royal prerogative to make that extension, and it has subsequently passed an Act of Parliament. Sorry, but they're out of time.
Thank you for explaining that.
And sorry, and the last point,
and the third
is
point.
that the third point, which is the most I think the first point about the money is the most offensive to the British people.
It is.
But the last point is that if we are successful in our action, it will cause chaos. So what they're saying is that if they lose, chaos will ensue.
I thought they liked chaos. Just as an aside. Sorry, go on. They are saying it will cause chaos. Please expand on that.
Okay, well, what they're asking the court to consider is the consequence of a decision in our favour. Well, terribly sorry, government.
Well, we leave, or we've left. It's confirmation that we've left. Is the ramification? No.
Yeah, but Sir Robert Eads, who, by the way, was the British barrister acting for the government against Gina Miller, and who, by the way, I believe has been paid £8 million by the government over the last 6 years in representing government in certain cases. This is under the Freedom of Information Act.
Wow.
Every single point he brought up against the Gina Miller case was overruled. One of his points is that Gina Miller was unconstitutional to bring such an application against the government, and the court simply found that it is not unconstitutional for any voter to bring an action against the government.
Are we not living in a dictatorship?
Yes, we are.
Look, on Monday, one of my friends up north, her son, she got assaulted by the police for no real reason, and her son, who's 15, had his head slammed so hard by GMP police into the windscreen it cracked the windscreen, and he is still having like fits and headaches and all sorts. And I'm sorry, but we are in a dictatorship. There is no such thing as democracy. It's over.
Well, what's even more frightening, in actual fact, is that there seems to be a news blackout on any actions against the Remainers. On Newsnight last Thursday, there was a young lady who wrote a question for the panel because she was told, we will not accept this question. Terribly sorry, and she persisted. And there was a 10-second stop while she was talking about democracy, and she managed to slip in that, in actual fact, we have left Brexit. And it's funny how the newspapers are not reporting on it. There is a media blackout.
Where was that she mentioned that? Was that on Question Time?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. Yes.
It was on television.
That's right. It was on Question Time. It was mentioned last week. But as you say, now let me just bring up a story that's pertinent to what you're saying here. Have a quick look at this, folks. Now, this is something that the Express is rumbling a little bit. It's the only paper of the shag rags that is really. But this is the 29th of April. Brexit date shock. Has UK already legally left the EU? Are we out of Brussels? They ran a similar story, basically the same story the week before, but this is slightly updated. Brexit has already begun, according to a pro-Brexit nationalist party. and a former appeal court judge has backed the claim. So is this correct? The English Democrats, a small political party, was founded in 2002 and has been led by Robin Tilbrook since its inception. Mr. Tilbrook has launched a high court battle to challenge the legality of the Brexit extension. He believes the decision to extend Article 50 was illegal and is calling for a legal declaration stating the UK left the EU on March 29th as originally planned. In a statement alongside the call for donations to aid the cost of legal assistance, the English Democrats said, "This is our only chance to complete what we voted for in the EU referendum. Forget the noisy demos and justified anger. This is the only way we can hope to have our democratic mandate honoured in law." The claim has been met with some support, most recently in the form of Sir Richard Aitkins, who sat in the Court of Appeal from 2008 to 2015. He told the Daily Mail, so the Daily Mail apparently did run something on this as well. And it looks as though the Express has just pulled this from the Daily Mail, the way this has been written, which is badly, by the way, and it's also got spelling mistakes, but what can you expect? He told the Daily Mail the extension was highly unsatisfactory and arguably illegal, the truth of which can only be determined by a court. He added, if the argument is correct, then it would mean that under UK law, we left the EU on March the 29th at 11 p.m. The treaties would no longer be binding and the UK would be no longer subjected to EU law. The argument obviously becomes much more important if there is any attempt at a longer extension, but logically the argument is correct. That if the argument is correct, then any attempt at a further extension would be legal nonsense, as the UK would already be out. At least 4 Tory MPs have also questioned the legality of the delay. That's a good place actually to bring you back in, Rodri, please. At least 4 Tory MPs have also questioned the legality of the delay. Why are we not hearing more from the ERG, for example, or anything at all about the Tilbrook case?
Well, I tell you where I think the politicians sit. I think natural supporters are the DUP. In terms of legal process, an application has been made for permission to apply. The response was, well, okay, the judge said, we've seen your detailed submissions. We must allow the government 7 days to respond. The government has responded. We have responded in turn. And effectively, we're waiting, and we think it shouldn't be too long. I can't put a date on it. But the judge has 3 options. He can either dismiss it, in which case we will appeal. And that's a highly unlikely option, given the strength and logic of the case. This is not a convoluted case. Second option is that he grants an oral hearing, which will then allow him to make a further determination on whether the case should proceed. Or alternatively, what happened in the Gina Miller case, and which is what we're rather hoping for, is the judge says we will roll the 2 together. We will commence with an oral hearing and then commence immediately with the trial. That's what happened with Gina Miller, and that's what we're hoping for. And inevitably, what will happen, whichever way the decision goes, someone's going to appeal. If it's not us, it's going to be a Remain group saying that the High Court judge got it wrong. It's a matter for the Supreme Court, which ultimately will make the final determination. Now, there's a particular point that was brought to my attention, which is rather interesting.
Go on.
Emma Arbuthnot, who is the Chief Magistrate of England and Wales, and who, by the way, was the one who sentenced me to 12 weeks in jug for my ill-advised Facebook post.
Yeah, something about Gina Miller, no?
Okay. But you know, that's
so
ancient history.
Politically incorrect. Yeah.
What is jug? What's jug?
Nick, porridge.
Oh my God.
He did 12 weeks, didn't he? He did 12 weeks inside.
HMP Wandsworth and then at HMP Thameside. There
God.
it is. Anyway, that's what happens if you put something on Facebook which someone doesn't like.
Was that an open prison, Rodri? Just as an aside.
No, it was Category B.
Really?
I was considered highly dangerous and liable to escape.
Whoa!
When are the jackboots finally going to walk down Pall Mall then?
Well, we did actually on Friday.
He made a crack about Gina Miller, for crying out loud. He just made a crack about Gina Miller. Something that everybody else was thinking. He said, And he got 12 weeks. 12 weeks in a category B. That is absolutely outrageous.
My God.
Well, I did actually have quite a lot of fun. One of my cellmates, I was doing 12 weeks for a Facebook post, and my cellmate, who is now my godson, he's doing an 11-year stretch for attempted murder. I thought it was kind of interesting that the prison should put someone like me in with a guy doing 11 years.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that we got on extremely well and he's a great mate and we stay in contact via emailerprisoner.com is testament to human friendship.
Maybe the judge was hoping that you'd chuck him a few quid.
Did you get offered the Peckham Rolex?
Well, they refused to give it to me. Anyway, moving on. One of the practical problems that will arise is that last week Emma Arbuthnot granted an extradition order to 3 individuals who were subject to a European arrest warrant. So in actual fact, whilst we have left Europe on March the 29th, European law is still being enacted in our own courts. Now, if you think about that, Emma Arbuthnot has made a judgment based on European law, which has affected 3 individuals who have now been extradited. And I think they were bad lads, but that's not the point. How the hell do you unwind the decisions which are currently being made on a daily basis, which are subject to European law, when in actual fact they no longer apply? You can't, because this government has ring-fenced itself with men with machine guns. You're in 36 Germany, I'm afraid. Well, it's funny. It's funny you should say that. I went on the Good Friday march in support of soldiers B and F, who are the 2 paratroopers who've been prosecuted, and there were about 5,000 veterans, all good men with extremely violent pasts. We were escorted by a total of 30 policemen, and as we approached Parliament Square, we wanted to protest in front of Parliament, and the police said, unfortunately, we've got to clear Parliament Square of these eco-warriors. And there were 200 policemen clearing Parliament Square.
They got to deal with the super glue kids, haven't they?
Yeah, well, some of the ex-paratroopers said, "Don't worry, officer, we'll clear them for you." And it was unfortunate. It's unfortunate the constabulary declined our offer because we were all up for it. But there was not one arrest on our march, and there was quite a lot of passion on the march. You've got men who've served their country, and the government has completely negated its obligations to men who were given orders, acted under order, and lo and behold, the Good Friday Agreement gives a get-out-of-jail-free card to terrorists who don't keep records. When they go out and kill people, they don't put in a logbook. It doesn't have to be filed. However, Her Majesty's Armed Forces, every time there's a contact or an engagement, it is scrupulously recorded, which provides some form of evidence for a prosecution if that is what is desired.
I think the Queen's got a lot to answer for, and I guarantee you, gentlemen, we can all sit here because we've all been very pacified. We're nothing more than sheep. Until we get the gates of Downing Street fixed open and subject them to the everyday conditions that we have to all live by, nothing's going to change.
Well, hang on. Do you know what? And I am going to plug it. There is a crowdfunding website open for the Robin Tilbrook case. I think, we are extremely hopeful that when we win that case, there will be a cultural revolution in respect of how we view our politicians and how we view Westminster. Because in actual fact, what it will have demonstrated is the pure corruption and contempt with which the electorate is held by its elected members. And I think at that point, when that point has been proved that we have been overtly lied to, that in actual fact there'll be a range of deselections of our professional political class and hopefully an influx of people who view politics in the form of vocation as opposed to a job for which they get paid and a career.
I agree with you there, and I'm going to disappear in a second and let you two fine gentlemen carry on. What I would like to say before I disappear on Nigel Farage, if Nigel Farage, after witnessing the fact that we was not leaving the European Union on the 29th, if he had joined forces and swallowed his ego and got back with Gerard Batten and bolstered up the UKIP party, they would rip it. He split the vote. Everyone knows that Conservatives and Labours are going to get landslided because they just let everybody down. UKIP will get him really big. Gerard Batten's a constitutionalist and Farage has split the vote. I'll catch you all soon. Thank you.
I'll pick up that band for you, Dave. No problem.
Go on then. Go on, Ashwood. I know. Well, before you do, I want to ask Paul Perrin. I know you're chewing on the bit for that.
Hello there, still here.
Paul, tell me what are your thoughts about the Tilbrook case? You must have seen it floating around. You must have watched Daily Brexit shows talking about it.
Yeah, I think just reading through the documents, it seems pretty obvious that it's correct. I think one of the problems that we've always got is that there's so many fringe nutcase type lines about sort of free men and whatever, that when this sort of thing comes up from a small party, people just don't give it credibility. And I think one of the things on the funding is, if this did actually get some coverage in the press, seeing that it was moving forwards, I think the funding was just flooding. But at the moment, no one really, someone says, oh, there's this small party, the English Democrats, they're doing X, Y, Z. And people think, well, there's lots of people doing this, that, and the other. So it actually needs to get the coverage, to get the credibility. And once it's in the headlines, I can't think I've actually donated a couple of times to it. I don't think there's a single Brexiteer, if once they see it's credible, who would dig in their pockets. Although I totally agree that it's outrageous that the government are using our own money against us. Every penny they've got has come from us. So they're taking our money, funding the fight against us, and then saying, you haven't got enough left to take us on. Yeah,
that's right. It's outrageously arrogant, isn't it? Alan, what about you? Do you have any hope for this?
Oh, that's a trick question. I have. Right, I'm not legally backed, so it's really out of my my knowledge, if you like.
Yeah.
I have the utmost admiration for these people doing this case, and I see a lot of support. As you know, I've got a huge number of followers on Facebook, particularly. I see a huge number of people trying to support it, trying to circulate it, trying to share it, and that I totally support. I'll support anything that is a good cause, a genuine cause, that might realistically end with, well, the chaos. If they want chaos, bring on the chaos.
I have to say, I do like Rodri's line when we first spoke, and he was basically telling me how he wanted to bring down a government and go down in history for bringing down a government. I mean, that sounds like a good thing to stick on your bucket list.
That's similar to my statement, which I've made very, very clear. I don't want to leave the European Union. I want to destroy the European Union.
Yeah, me too.
And the only country
are we vengeful? Are we vengeful?
Is the United Kingdom. That's my platform. That's where I've always stood.
That's right. Yeah.
But I'm more interested in the UKIP Brexit party debacle, but I don't want to take it off this subject.
No. I want to talk about both tonight, and let's talk a bit more about that. I want to just mention a couple of stories that are relevant to that. But first of all, I'll take a few comments from the comments, what have you. Darley Gardner says, "Hi everyone. If it's any good, I stuck my beef in yesterday. I sent a comment to Steve Baker on his YouTube." Weigh in saying, keep us posted on Brexit, and he put a heart up. Cheers, Darley. Naomi M says, Rodney Atkinson did not make much success of his treason case against Heard and Maud. Does the Tilbrook case have any more strength than the Atkinson case? Rodders?
Well, I'm not particularly familiar with the Atkinson case.
I'm not.
All I can do is to comment on the logic, which is very raw in the Tilbrook case. And just to recap, in summary, the government decided, Theresa May decided she was going to invoke Article 50 without any reference to Parliament, because she felt that that was her right as Prime Minister, invoking royal prerogative. Gina Miller said, you cannot do that. It's an international treaty. You need to conform with your domestic constitution in order to make any amendment or arrangement in respect of a treaty. It went to court, and the Supreme Court said there is no question of royal prerogative being applied. It cannot exist in part. It either exists in whole or not at all. And the Supreme Court said, in this instance, it does not exist at all. Therefore, the Withdrawal Act was then passed, and it is very clear that any change to the Withdrawal Act, it is possible to change it, but it can only be done via an act of law. There was no such act of law prior to March the 29th.
Yeah.
Passing a law after the horse has bolted is absolutely of no use whatsoever. It is illegal. We were out on March the 29th. It is as simple as that.
Okay, let's take a few comments. Sarah Boland says, I love Rodders. He's so laid back. And Charlotte Jameson is saying that we're all a bit dodgy here. Oh, yeah, that's right. Somebody said that you were dodgy, Rodders, because you've been inside. Wendy Miller, it would take 3 years to go through all laws the EU have made. Break all treaties with the EU, says Leah Lewis. Wendy Miller, and they said climate protesters were peaceful, but over 1,000 people arrested. Thanks to everybody that's sharing. Please share. Did we establish if Rodders was married? Asked Charlotte New Jameson. Nobody wants to get involved with the Gorilla Glue, says Amin Ahmoud. That was a lovely sight, seeing all of them veterans walking together and bugger all on the news, says Bernadette Ryan. Helen Carberry says, where do we find an honest judge? Now, that's a good point, Rodders. I know we've covered this before on this show, but it's something that is just it's a key question, isn't it?
Do you know what? It is a very, very difficult question. In the past, I mean, I think being a judge again was vocational. It has now become very much politicized and a career move. We've become careerists all of a sudden. I mean, I do think there are some very good judges, some very good judgments, but you then see some appalling judgments. I mean, an example, and this is slightly off topic, but can you remember there was that young lad who jumped off his bicycle, I think it was in Croydon, with a 12-inch voodoo knife and started beating on the window of that motorist. Now, we're living in an environment where knife crime is rife, and we're trying to make a point in the courts that, in actual fact, this is unacceptable. Yeah. To just carry a knife which has no useful purpose other than to cause damage is a criminal offence. The judge in the first judgment basically gave this guy a suspended sentence. Now, what message does that send? It is completely inconsistent with policy. It is completely inconsistent with the law. And it subsequently was appealed, and the lad was given 3.5 years in jail. There is such disparity amongst our judges. I don't think they spend enough time together, frankly, debating and discussing sentencing and jurisprudence. Which I don't think too many judges actually bother studying. Where do we find an honest judge? Well, you know what? Under a rock, I suppose. I mean,
it is a worry. It is a worry, isn't it? It is a real worry. Paul, let's just go on to the local elections a little bit. I want to ask you if you see that it is possible that we might somehow send out a message that would avert it seems to me what's going to happen now is that Theresa May clearly is just desperately trying to get this deal for vassalage through. At least Thursday, if there is a big enough revolt around the country, then I don't know. Could that possibly be averted, or will it not happen anyway because the numbers are tight for her deal?
Ollie,
I think all our politicians are just too scared to actually cause Brexit. Everyone's waiting for someone else to do it. I think Theresa May was waiting for the EU to throw us out. Corbyn doesn't want to have his fingers on it at all, and she doesn't want to do it. And basically, I think we've got a culture in this country. I mean, going back to, we haven't got the judges we used to have. The police are pretty useless nowadays, and MPs, they've all come in, all their past, they were brought in under the EU. The highest accolade you could get in the UK Parliament, you're just a middle manager for the EU. So we haven't got any politicians who are real leaders, because anyone who was a real leader, why would they become an MP?
Do you think they've all been bought? Do you think that's basically the deal? Why they're going against the express wishes of their constituents in so many cases? Do you think that is because they've been bought, or do you think they're just stupid, or do you think they maybe genuinely believe that what they're doing is in the best interest of the country and that democracy doesn't really matter, or what?
I just think they're very, very selfish now. The whole idea, I think representative democracy in this country is now dead, because people talk about proportional representation, etc. But it doesn't matter how someone gets voted for and put in as an MP if once they're in, they don't do what they said they would do before they're elected. I mean, changing the electoral system, we successfully elected a parliament full of leavers, or we thought we had. I think I mentioned before that me and the Brighton Brexiteers, we got a group together. We actually in Maidenhead on Saturday, Theresa May's constituency, and we had I think about 10 of us along the high street, actually campaigning. Because we're from different groups, we're not a specific party. I was mainly there as anti-conservative. I think the Conservative Party, I know lots of people got gripes about the other parties and them going back on their word, but it was only the Conservative Party who were elected to give us Brexit. There's no way Labour, regardless, there's no way they could give us Brexit. There's no way the Lib Dems can. The only people who can give us Brexit are the Conservatives, and they're just refusing to. So putting people into opposition, if you just swing one way then the others, we tend to in this country between two parties. Being in opposition isn't that tough a life.
You know what? That is a very important point, though. And actually, let me just read this story. This is the top story of The Independent, because it's relevant to the question I'm about to ask you, which is Brexit news. Attempt to get Labour to commit to second referendum shot down at party meeting. This is one of the other bullet points from the day. For what they're worth, but they all add up, don't they, and tell us that these people are just trying to, scupper Brexit, it seems to me. Labour supporters of a second Brexit referendum have failed to force Jeremy Corbyn to commit to a public vote in all circumstances after a marathon 5-hour meeting. The party's ruling National Executive Committee agreed a manifesto for the European elections fully in line with Labour's existing policy. A source said it means Labour is only pledged to support a fresh referendum if it cannot secure the necessary changes to the government's deal or a general election. I think they mean or have a general election. The decision, widely criticised as a fudge, represents a victory for Mr Corbyn over shadow cabinet heavyweights, including Tom Watson, his outspoken deputy leader, who has been showing his true colours, I think, more recently over Brexit now, and the fact that he wants to prevent it. The Labour leader is determined to avoid alienating his Leave voters by sticking to a policy of a referendum to prevent what he dubs a Tory Brexit or a no-deal Brexit. I mean, so you say, Paul, that the Labour Party maybe could be given a bit of a pass. I don't see how they can be, given that But I mean, when people go to the polls, the local elections on Thursday, my advice to them is, if you believe in democracy, and if you believe certainly in Brexit, but even if you just believe in the former, then do not vote for the Liberal Democrats who do not believe in democracy. But Brexit, fair enough. At least they're honest about that. Fair enough. In the case of Labour and the Tories, they both put in their manifestos, they pledged to honour the referendum result. No? And so the fact that we have had all of this from both parties, not just the Tories with their Remoron cabinet and this Remoron prime minister, but from so many that are not representing their constituents and even leaving the party rather than doing that. People like Subri, for example. Why should Labour be given any pass at the local elections? Surely anybody that supports a party that is somehow supporting the EU, anybody that supports that should not be supported. Paul,
why
Paul,
we're
please.
still talking about party politics? You're all still missing the point. The same people run Labour as run the Conservatives, run the Lib Dems.
Yes, Alan, you're right. But we're trying to be pragmatic here because we've got these elections coming up. And I agree with you, but this is an opportunity to kick them in the teeth.
Yeah, Mark,
in 10 years, I've never argued with party political platform. And I've got 80,000 followers.
But at the moment...
But because I say things that people are thinking but won't say. I'm deliberately...
Well, I tell you what, if you've got 80,000 followers, can you ask them to put £1 each into the Robin Tilbrook?
I am frequently.
Very quickly, I left a message at the House of Commons today for the beast of Bolsover, Dennis Skinner.
Good man.
It was a comment that you made earlier. We do have these careerist politicians. We've got party politics and people playing at party politics, trying to climb the greasy pole. But there are still some conviction politicians who will not back down. Dennis Skinner is one of those voices that I think will be reported by the press, will break this press deadlock. He will be incensed, is my view, when I get to speak to him, about this notion of the government. Actually, we will beat the people with the checkbook. That is...
Okay, so he's a good example. Rodri, he is a good example. Dennis Skinner. Why should anybody vote for him at the next general election, given that he condones a party that is clearly wanting to scupper Brexit? Yeah. The current leader, maybe not. But let's face it. Hold on, Alan. One sec. You answered this question, and you said that we shouldn't be considering that. Well, you didn't say that, but you said maybe we're. Look, my question. So to you now, Rodri, why should anybody back Dennis Skinner, whether they love the beast of Bolsover or not, because he is supporting a party that effectively supports the EU?
Well, unfortunately,
right. The first thing.
Hold on, Alan. Hold on. You can answer this afterwards, please.
Unfortunately, it's a fact of life that which party would Dennis Skinner otherwise support? He's been a Labour supporter for most of his life. He's, I believe, the longest-serving MP. I think he is appalled, and what I want to encourage him to do is to revert to his old form and to tell people how he feels, where he feels the Labour Party has gone wrong. I don't believe for a second he condones the current Labour Party, but where else is he going to go? Is he going to be
I do empathise with that. Do you think that I'm harsh then? Because my attitude is none of these people should be supported in any way, shape or form, whilst they are politically, whether they mean to or not, indirectly at least, they're supporting the EU.
But the only thing to do at the next election, as I say, putting a party into opposition just isn't a punishment. After a couple of years, they'll just be back. So, I mean, as a libertarian, sort of extreme libertarian, parties are the problem. Our MPs, instead of being decent individuals, are just sheep to their parties, and the parties will only select candidates who are willing to be sheep. So they've actually filtered out any decent politician, if there are any left in Parliament, would have been in there for a very long time, because no new person going in is going to be anything other than a sheep. So the reason I'm actually anti-conservative is because only they could deliver Brexit. Maybe Labour would, maybe they wouldn't. We don't know. We're only guessing. We know for a fact the Tories have refused. So what I want to do is, I think the Tory party, the most successful political party in Western Europe, the oldest party, the one that's been in power more than any other, is come to the end of its life. And I think what I want to do is I want to see the Conservative Party actually destroyed and shut down. Then once they're out of the way, there'll be space for a new centre-right, a genuinely centre-right party to emerge. Because if you look at the things that the Conservatives are doing now, they're to the left of Tony Blair. They're talking about how many calories you can have in a pizza delivered to your house. This is just complete nonsense. That's no,
really?
Government just has no play. Yeah, it's about people getting fat. They want to limit the size of pizzas. There's lots of stories like that. And when I tell them, people look at me and think that's fake news. But I've got all the references.
They should limit expense claims.
If you want a classic example of an utter destruction and dilution of independent thinking and minds, it's the destruction of the House of Lords. In the House of Commons, you're expected to play the party game. It's a different environment. The House of Lords, the only real purpose of the House of Lords was to be wholly independent, because you couldn't be fired. You didn't have to be elected, and if you didn't like something, you jolly well stood up and you said, I don't like it. I don't care if it's government policy. If I sit on the Conservative bench, I'm not voting for it. Now, unfortunately, the House of Commons has filled the House of Lords with an equivalent. So in actual fact, the Conservative benches always will vote with the government. The Labour benches generally will vote, unless it's a particularly odd topic, with Labour.
That's
and
right.
You've only got a handful of crossbenchers who are independent.
Yeah.
So there could be no greater magnification of the destruction of independent thought and integrity than just looking at the House of Lords.
The thing is, if we carry on as we've carried on in the past, and we get bored of one government, so we vote for the other party, it just goes backwards and forwards every few years. So if I had a campaign at the moment, or where I'm campaigning, is to actually put an end to the Conservative Party. They've betrayed us to such an extent that they've lost their right to actually be part of our political system. And if we do destroy the party, hopefully we'll get no votes. The next government, regardless of which party it is, will be on notice that the people will not be messed around. If we just do what we've done in the past, nothing's going to change.
Hang on.
That's why we can't take on. That's why we can't take down Labour and the Conservatives at the same time.
Well, if you want the betrayal of a country, a wholesale betrayal of our nation, you don't have to look further than Tony Blair, who lied throughout his career.
He started a lot of the current ones.
An utter narcissist who changed national institutions that work perfectly well because he wanted to modernise, so his name would go down in the annals of history as the great moderniser. He lied about a war that has cost this country billions that we could not afford. He took advantage and squandered the economy that was built up under a Conservative government. And that's not to make the Conservatives, it's not a huge compliment for them. Free market trade is what created the wealth that was then decimated. If we look at the actions of Gordon Brown when he sold off our gold stocks, to announce to the marketplace that we are about to sell off 2/3 of our gold reserve in advance of doing it, the gold traders were rubbing their hands. He sold absolutely at the bottom of the market.
I agree with you, but I agree with all of that was absolutely wrong and it's betrayal. But the thing is, what happened is people voted Conservative and now Labour is still in the game and people could be going back to Labour. If after Brown, the Labour Party had been eradicated, this government would have been on notice, the subsequent governments would have been on notice that they can't treat people like that. But Labour got a free ride. So Gordon Brown, he went, and Labour now back in the game. The only way we're going to change this is by actually taking one party completely out And future governments have to know that if they betray the public, they're not just going to go in opposition for a few years, which is fine. They're comfortable in opposition. They're still paid well. Instead of that, they have to know that they are going to be removed from our political system. I know it sounds a bit.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of people that agree with you. There's another big story today, and this is the only other kind of bullet story, really, I guess, that I wanted to cover, and that's grassroots Conservatives force emergency no confidence May meeting in May. I think that is about May. Theresa May's unpopularity in her own party has reached a new low, with Tory activists successfully triggering an extraordinary general meeting where they will push for a no-confidence vote in their own Prime Minister. The Sun reports that a petition signed by a local Conservative Association chairman has reached the threshold, the first time a Tory leader has faced such a challenge in 185 years. Shove that on your CV, Tez. The petition itself reads, "We no longer feel that Mrs May is the right person to continue as Prime Minister, or anything else for that matter, to lead us forward in the negotiations. We therefore, with great reluctance, ask that she considers her position and resigns to allow the Conservative Party to choose another leader and the country to move forward and negotiate our exit from the EU." This is quite a kick in the nuts, really. I think she got nuts.
Dominic Grieve actually failed. Dominic Grieve failed a vote of confidence by his local association.
Yeah, and that's right.
Theresa May stepped up and said he's given a lot of good work, so the association can get lost.
Unbelievable.
Well, do you know what? I'm glad you bring that up. I think the notion of the destruction of an entire political party is slightly optimistic. What we need is a grassroots revolution amongst the party associations to reconsider the achievements of the candidates that they have put forward for Parliament, and in actual fact, to decide whether they want to be represented by them going forward. What we need is a fresh intake of MP who recognises that in actual fact it's not a job for life. The associations have not taken the responsibility which actually is within their power.
But on Saturday, one of my main chants, as the people were coming past me, we were handing out all the different leaflets we had, I was actually saying that the entire Conservative Party have tricked voters into electing a Remainer government. And the people who did that tricking were the activists. They knocked on people's door and they said, vote for this guy, vote for Dominic Grieve, we'll come out of the EU, vote for Anna Soubry, we'll come out. It's those activists. They lied to the public. Anyone who's associated with the Tory party in any way is culpable. To be associated with the Tory party today has to be the ultimate shame on anyone. And that's right down to the activists. They're the people who selected these candidates. They're the people who got these candidates selected. Every single activist and every member of the Tory party, I blame. Not just.
Well, actually, I think that's a bit unfair. It's not all the Tory activists who select the candidates. It's the associations, which are made up of a handful of people. I was a Tory activist opposing. Who were we opposing? It was in Rochester, and I was handing out leaflets, and it was a jolly good day out, and it was in quite a rough place in principally Labour, and we were told this is the manifesto that we're promoting, and I actually believed it. And there was a rather large chap who made it clear that he wanted me to really foxtrot Oscar, and I said, well, okay. Of all the putting politics to one side, of all the things that matter to you, what's the most important? And he said, well, immigration, and he was quite aggressive about it. And I happened to be campaigning with a young black girl who was standing right behind me, and he couldn't see that she was standing right behind me. Anyway, she pops her head out with her clipboard and said, "So, sir, that would be immigration, would it?" And of course, the chap was mortified. And I thought, well, I'll let him off the hook. I said, how about the economy, sir? Is that important to you? And he said, oh, yes, the economy. Yes, much more important than immigration. But the point is that the leaflets that we were given with the spiel actually, it's not the activists who are persuading the electorate of the quality of their MP. We were just told this is what the MP stands for, and this is what his manifesto is. Well, and that is all handing out.
You were talking to people, and they were taking it on faith from you. You were saying this is what he believes. If you didn't actually know that was the case, you're part of the deception.
Deception isn't active. That is active. I read the manifesto, which is signed by the candidate. And if it's signed by the candidate and it's handed out in his name, I have no reason to disbelieve that that's not what he actually intends. Now, if he has deceived me, I feel aggrieved by that. But I'm not part of a deception by handing out a leaflet, a letter which has been signed by someone with his signature saying, I promise to do this.
You were reckless. If you weren't actually, you were reckless in letting people think that you had some credibility in saying what the candidate would do, when in fact you're now saying you don't. The Violent Brexiteers, we've been to several, because we're on the south coast, we've been to several constituencies on away days. We've been to Dominic Greaves' constituency. In fact, we managed to meet him to a fundraiser, so we actually managed to give him one of our Get Rid of Dominic Greaves leaflets directly. But his local association, they must have known that he was really Remainer, but they went out and got him elected. We've been to Amber Rudd's constituency. That's just down the road. Again, all the activists there must have known she was a core Remainer, but they got elected. So
that's right. That constituency was about 70%, wasn't it, in favour of leaving the EU? Amber Rudd's, I think.
Yeah. So we've been round to several constituencies, and I blame on a doorstep. It's the local activists.
The thing is, though, the bottom line is that people thought that these characters would honour democracy now, and that's the difference where we are now. At this point in the electoral cycle, the difference is that for the first time in their lives, people not only have been able to make some kind of statement saying that politics wasn't straight, it wasn't playing from a straight bat. Now they can say it with absolute certainty, and that is the difference, huh?
So now that's why I think now is the time that we can destroy the Conservative Party, because after the Brexit thing, no party has ever done anything so against democracy, so against the people. And this is where we've got to draw a line under it. If we just go back and it's a bit like Blair, okay, they lied about Iraq, so eventually they got chucked out, but now the Labour Party is still there, they're going to come back. There's MPs who have been Labour MPs before Blair, they're still there now. The fact that all those lies happened has not impacted them. So that's why we've got to make this change, make it permanent. It's got to be something permanent.
So Paul, you've supported Tilbrook's case personally, you say?
Yeah.
A couple of times.
Yeah.
And what sort of funds have you taken in now, Rodri? I'm gonna wrap now. But I just want to get a bit of a summary of where this case is going. Rodri, how much do you have in the way of funds? How far along this course can you survive against the wishes of the government, saying that you cannot afford this action and telling the court to judge that it should be thrown out on that ground? Incredible.
Well, what was interesting, as you know, I provided a personal guarantee to the barristers and chambers, but that's not relevant to the civil procedure rules with regard to the High Court. Right now, we stand at £1,799 that's been raised in the last 2 days. A number of friends and colleagues have been distributing by email the link, and I've made it my job to follow up and say, how many people did you actually send it to? How many people have you actually spoken to? All it takes is for Millwall Football Club to donate 1 pint of beer each, and we're in the Supreme Court, just to put it in context. And it will come in stages. I think that as soon as we've got the next ruling from the court, which hopefully will be an oral hearing rolled up with a trial, then people will know that it's real, it's serious, it's not just a one-man political party. I think that is one of the problems, is that some people look at the English Democrats and they think, well, it's a small party. Is this really real? Mm-hmm. And I think as soon as we can publish for everyone to see the original court papers saying that actually this is going to court, I think in actual fact, that's when, with a bit of luck, the DUP, other politicians, who I think at the moment are slightly nervous about the outcome of the next hearing. As soon as we've got a listing date where in actual fact people know this is real, it's in front of a real judge, it's in front of court, this is not a joke, the establishment are having to take it seriously, I think that's when people really start opening their checkbooks.
There was some talk of getting some...
One thing.
Go on, Paul.
Because the Brighton Brexiteers, because we go out fairly regularly, if there was a A5 PDF of a leaflet for the case to do the fundraising, obviously English Democrats can be on there, but we don't want to make it look as if we're English Democrats. But,
I agree with you.
Yeah. So if you could give us a leaflet, I would actually go out, get a couple of thousand printed, and we'd give those out with the other Brexit stuff we give out when we go out, and help fundraise. I'll shake a tin. I'm totally happy to do that. The only thing is, we, unlike some other parts, for Brighton Brexiteers, it's just private individuals. We don't get any money. We don't get any money from politics. We don't get any backing. So everything we do comes out of our own pockets. But as I said, we print our own leaflets. But if there was the artwork to download as a PDF, I'll take it to the printers or run it off on my printer and hand out leaflets and help the fundraising.
Well, look, what I'll do, an excellent man who's a friend of mine for 30 years. He's the chief coordinator for the logistics for the fundraise. He set up the crowd fund, and we're both agreed we need to move away from the English Democrat element. And it's ironic that I speak so often with Robin Tilbrook, and my name is St. David's. But we're agreed that this is a national effort, and in actual fact, the PR profile does need to change because it's for everyone who voted leave. 17.4 million. Don't care where you came from, whether it's Gibraltar, Falkland Islands, it doesn't matter. This is a national issue, the biggest constitutional case of its kind. And suitable materials. Again, Olly, what I'll do is I'll email you and get Chris DeVere is his name to get in contact with a couple of proofs so that they can be distributed, and then you can play with them as you choose. And the word just needs to get out there. I mean, I think it's absolutely appalling. You think of the Sunderland March. Those folks who took 2 weeks to march all the way down to Parliament Square. And the response we get from the Treasury solicitor is, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
Your march, that effort, 14 days of marching a long way, and reminds me of the Jarrow March. It's just been slapped in the face by people using other people's money.
How much have you actually raised so far, Rodri?
It's on the website. I think it's £1,799.
But that's in the last 2 days, in total.
Oh, in total, I think there's something well over 100,000 because Robin had been fundraising beforehand. But we've got 27 days to go to reach £10,000, which is the minimum threshold, and we set that there on purpose. We then have a stretch fund, and I think by the time we get to the stretch fund, the court listing will be in the diary, and people will know that this is real. This is not just some crackpot little political party, that the government is having to pay attention, and this is going to the Supreme Court.
Now, I've got an interesting question from Bill Thompson, and I'm hearing this from a few folks in the community as well, about Robin Tilbrook. How can Tilbrook stand as an MEP when he is supposed to be taking the government to court? Seems like a conflict to me, says or asks Bill Thompson. What would you say to that, Rodri?
Well, There is no conflict. It's almost an insurance policy, and I agree with the strategy. In the court system, you never know how long a court case is going to go on for, and it could take 3 months. So why not work and fight from the inside? You know, if the Supreme Court says we're not going to hear it until September,
yeah,
Robin will have missed the opportunity of actually sitting inside Parliament and explaining to them, the European Parliament, and explaining to them, I don't know why I'm here. The reason I felt that I have to be here is because the government has made a terrible mistake, as have you. And I think that's a much stronger position to be in.
No, I disagree. What will that achieve? What does any MEP in Brussels ever achieve other than noise?
That's Alan Ashwood.
Well, you're absolutely correct. But at least it gives him a voice, and also he will be able to present the court papers as the action unfolds, and present it to the European Parliament and invite their comments as to why we are, why they believe we're in the EU.
But we're recognising the European Union as our government over our government by being we do what we said we've done. We do what we believe we've done on the 29th of March. We walk out. We leave the vacant seats. We leave it to the idiots, the Tories, the Labour Party, and the Brexit Party, the trained monkeys, as Nigel Farage said 15 years ago. Let them play.
I'd suggest a third way, which is I don't think MEPs can actually achieve anything, but apart from it gives them a bit of publicity, gives people a bit of a platform. But what I would like, and I said this ages ago when UKIP were running, I actually ran for UKIP as an MP in 2010, but I always thought what their MEPs should do is get elected and then not take their seats. They should take the money and use it to travel around the UK, actually actively speaking to people in the UK, not waste their time in Brussels. They don't achieve anything there. And if you think about it,
I don't agree with that. I think that this particular EU Parliament coming up has the opportunity to change a lot from within in a way that no EU Parliament ever has.
You can't change anything.
They can't get us out.
They can put a lot of pressure. They can put a lot of pressure on, and they can continue
they can't put any pressure on. They can dance naked on the table in Parliament, and people will sit back and have a smile and give them a round of applause. It has zero effect. Nigel Farage is a biggest hypocrite. Nigel Farage.
I don't agree. And I'll give you. You've used the example there, Nigel Farage. And his speeches to the EU have been inspirational for a lot of people. Whatever you think about Nigel Farage, the fact is that he has given. Let me finish, Alan, please. Let me finish. He has given speeches which people share, and they say, "Listen to this." In other words, he's been. Let me finish, for crying out loud.
You do not run a democracy in your radio station. Goodbye.
Am I allowed to finish a question or what? My question was going to be, he has, and your point, I think, Rodders, is that Robin Tilbrook reckons that there he has some sort of a platform, maybe to get on telly and say something, yes. and that has been proven. Paula Chamberlain says, Piers, my old mate Piers Garnham, has cancelled because you're talking about Robin Tilbrook case and he's avoiding it like the plague. No, actually, he just had something else to do. Some of us have tweeted him, I think that she's referring to Robin, I assume, asking him to speak about the case on TV, and he has blocked us. He's as false as a 10-bob note. Well, call in.
Look, Robin has been, he's tried hard, and I'm bringing up the rear. The newspapers don't want to hear from him. The editor of the Times basically has blacklisted him. He's requested television interview and television time, and they're not prepared to do it. If he was to sit as an MEP At the very least, they'll have to televise some of the outrageous things. When I say outrageous, not in the Nigel Farage sense, but in a legal sense. There is a news blackout on his case because the government does not want to hear it, and the media are kowtowing. Now, if you're the political editor of a newspaper, and a senior member of government, say a government whip, says, you know what, be careful how you deal with this matter, because otherwise we might not be talking as openly with you as we would otherwise like to. That is how the threat works.
Another avenue that you might like to look at, because you mentioned about getting coverage, and you mentioned the number of views that Nigel Farage's speeches in Parliament, in the European Parliament get. I mean, apart from the fact of the other 24 UKIP MEPs, most people could probably name only 2 more, so they got no coverage. But now that UKIP have actually got Carl Benjamin and Mark Meacham on board, I mean, Sargon has got 1 million followers on YouTube. And he's totally for Brexit. He's running as a UKIP MEP. So he'd be an ideal person to speak to about actually publicising the fundraising.
Well, again, it comes back to we're slightly in limbo until we get the next court ruling. And if the court ruling says this is going to trial, that is the point at which politicians jump off the fence. Right now, any politician saying, I believe in this case, in the absence of an affirmative ruling, is taking a very big risk. Because if the judge says, well, you know, let's consider the merit and drag it out a bit, that politician runs the risk of looking a little bit foolish.
Well, the thing about Sargon is he's not at all worried about looking foolish. You may have seen some of the headlines about him. And it wouldn't be a matter of him as a politician backing something which didn't work out. He's just communicating with his. He did a video the other day about his MEP's campaign. In 2 days, it had 60,000 views. So if just letting him communicate, because he doesn't go on and just do political speeches. He's got his own channel which he does his own stuff on.
Yeah.
Obviously, politics comes into it, but just getting him to publicise the fact. He's an intelligent guy. Let him look at and he can give his own verdict on it. But just getting that message out to 1 million people who are all
the other person I've got a call into, who I've got a great deal of regard for, is Tim Martin of Wetherspoons.
Oh yeah.
And he is newsworthy. And I don't think he's too concerned. He's not in the political race. And again, I'm hoping to speak to him as soon as he returns my call. Left it for him this morning as a matter of urgency. And all we need to do is to get the message out there and try and lift this news blackout. Yes. And that's the only way it can be described. I spoke to a very trusted and independent editor of a broadsheet, and he was very sympathetic, and he told me what his newspaper's policy was, and it was very disappointing to hear. And the advice was, get someone who is of celebrity value, who is newsworthy, who the newspapers will publish, and bingo, that you're off to the races, because more people will join the bandwagon. But he also agreed that it is premature to really put the boot into people. And when I say to put the boot in encourage people in a very hard-armed way to support the cause until we get the next court ruling, which we are expecting hopefully this week. With a definitive court ruling, you've actually got meat on the bone that people can then snap at.
Okay, I think I agree. I think that's good. But one of the things, I don't know if you saw the UKIP press launch of the MEP campaign with Sargon and Dankula, that's their on-screen names. But the point about what they're doing, Sargon actually said to the press when he went in, he said, they were asking questions, and he says, I don't need you. I've got my own platform. I don't care what you say. No one's listening to you. People are listening to me. So getting him on board isn't so you've got celebrity backing. It's the fact he's got a platform.
Carl Benjamin.
Get the mainstream media on if you can. But there are other platforms out there which are actually getting bigger. And it's not going to be long until they wipe the floor with the mainstream media. The respect for the mainstream media.
I don't know that we got time for that, though, Paul. I don't know that we got time. We got to keep trying every which way we can. Gentlemen, I want to say a big cheers. Thank you very much indeed for coming in tonight and having a chat.
Thank you for having me on.
You've been tuned into the Daily Brexit. I'm Olly Connelly. I want to say a big cheers to my special guests tonight, Paul Perrin and Viscount St David's. And also to Dave Witcher, who wasn't supposed to be on the show but was, and Alan Ashwood, who put the phone down on me. I don't know what happened to Alan. I basically agree with him. Apparently, I do not run a democracy on the show. No, I don't, actually. I admit it. I don't. We don't have any voting at all, in fact. But I subscribe to democracy in politics, that's for sure. Yeah. I try to, I suppose, keep it democratic-ish. I don't know. I mean, I don't think much of morons. I mean, bugger them. Yeah? Come on. Anyway, right, okay, where can people go and donate if they want to, Rodri?
If you Google Robin Tilbrook, I think I did send you the link. There's a I can't remember what it's called. It's a crowdfund page which is specific to this.
Succinct. Succinct. Okay, I'll put it on there. It's the English Democrats, isn't it? The English Democrats .party. Is that correct, Rodri?
There's a separate. Hang on, let me.
You better get this right, mate. You better get this right. Go on.
It's called. Hang on a sec. It's called. What's it called again?
It's called Brexit. Go on.
It's called crowdjustice.com, and on the front page, you'll see the causes, and it's on there. So it's crowdjustice.com.
I'll tell you what, you better succeed. You better succeed, because I don't know how else we're going to get any Brexit, but, oh, blimey. Look, I'll see you tomorrow, folks, 7 o'clock. I'll put a link up to that now in the comments. Yeah, I'll get it from crying out loud. I tell you, you can't get the guess. God bless you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Cheerio.
Thanks, Ollie. Take care.